fa, sol, la, ti, do. Well, imagine showing up to play in the Super Bowl, right?
Mm.
And right before kickoff, the stadium just completely loses power.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no lights, no comms, just this massive empty grid. And that's exactly the kind of audible Mother Nature just called on the biggest outdoor sports festival of the year.
She really did.
So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive, crafted specifically for you.
Mm.
Today, our mission is to unpack a really fascinating stack of sources that you've shared with us. We're going to examine, well, some major national health policy shifts, look at the biological grit required to become a true sports legend, and this is the big one, we're heading straight into the mountains.
Right into the thick of it.
Exactly. We've got your ultimate guide to the 2026 GoPro Mountain Games, which are happening in Vail from June 4th through the 7th.
And, as I was analyzing these sources, a very distinct, overarching theme kind of emerged that ties all of this together, and that theme is adaptation.
Adaptation, okay.
Yeah, because whether we're looking at, top-down shifts in national public health guidelines or a massive outdoor sports festival having to radically change its entire structural playbook due to environmental realities, everything we're exploring today is fundamentally about how systems and individuals pivot.
How we adjust.
Exactly. How do we adapt when the foundational ground, or, in the case of Vail, the literal river shifts right beneath us?
I love that framing. It really sets the stage. And to understand adaptation, we really should start by looking at it from the top down.
Definitely.
So before we hit the trails in Vail, let's set the stage with the national news. Because macro-level policy shifts, they eventually ripple out and alter our day-to-day lives.
They absolutely do.
Right now, there's a major national update regarding public health policy. President Trump has directed the CDC to align with a recent assessment, and this assessment is calling for fewer childhood vaccines.
Right.
To put the specific numbers to this, earlier this year, the CDC announced updated recommendations that would reduce the number of recommended immunizations for children from 17 down to 11.
And that is, that is a profound restructuring of the logistical and bureaucratic apparatus of American public health.
A huge shift.
Oh, absolutely. Historically, CDC recommendations, they operate as this foundational framework that guides state health departments, right? So an administrative directive from the executive branch to shift from 17 to 11 recommended immunizations, it's not just a suggestion. It initiates a massive operational pivot across the entire healthcare ecosystem.
And just to be super clear for you listening, we aren't taking any political stance or endorsing any medical views here today.
No, not at all.
Our job is simply to unpack the mechanics of what is stated in the policy updates you provided. But I am genuinely trying to picture how this actually plays out on the ground. Like if I'm a school board administrator or I'm managing a local pediatric clinic, does this mean I'm suddenly rewriting my fall enrollment guidelines overnight? How does a baseline shift like this actually propagate through the system? Because it sounds incredibly complicated.
It is. And that's
Yeah.
exactly the right question to ask, because the mechanism of change here is incredibly complex. The CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, they create the schedule.
Okay.
When that schedule drops from 17 to 11, it triggers this massive bureaucratic domino effect. State legislatures and state health departments, the ones who actually codify those CDC guidelines into state law, they have to initiate legislative or administrative reviews.
Wow.
And then school districts rely on that state law to program their compliance software for student enrollment.
Wait, so the software that literally red flags a student's file if they're, missing a shot, that has to be completely reprogrammed across thousands of school districts.
Precisely. Yeah, thousands of them. And in the clinical space, pediatricians manage their inventory based on forward purchasing agreements.
I didn't even think about the supply chain.
Right. They buy vaccines months in advance, assuming a specific utilization rate based on that exact ACIP schedule. So if the baseline recommendation drops by roughly a third, clinics have to immediately alter their supply chain contracts. They have to adjust cold storage logistics, retrain nursing staff on the new compliance metrics.
Everything changes.
Everything.
Yeah.
Every single node in that network has to physically and administratively adapt to the new baseline.
That top-down systemic adaptation is fascinating, but, it's a very different animal than individual physical adaptation.
Oh, for sure.
Because sometimes adapting isn't about changing a policy, right? It's about pushing the human body to the absolute limits of endurance, which kind of brings us to the legacy of Claude Lemieux.
Yes, an absolute legend.
The NHL Alumni Association just announced his passing at 60 years old. And as of the latest reports we have from your sources, his cause of death and the location where he passed they remain unknown.
It marks the end of a truly defining era in hockey. I mean, when you look at his career, the metric that immediately stands out is his 4 Stanley Cups.
4 of them. That's just wild.
It is. But to truly understand what that means, we have to look at the biology and the psychology of that achievement. Because winning 4 Stanley Cups, it isn't just a matter of being on good teams.
Right.
It requires a level of physical adaptation that is almost unfathomable to the average person.
Well, yeah, because winning a single Stanley Cup means surviving a 2-month playoff run after an 82-game regular season.
Exactly.
I remember reading about players routinely playing through, like, fractured bones, separated shoulders, and torn ligaments just to get through a single playoff series.
Yeah, the physiological wear and tear is catastrophic. Cellular degradation, the accumulation of microtraumas in the joints, the reliance on cortisone just to physically be able to lace up the skates.
That's brutal.
To subject your body to that grueling gauntlet and emerge victorious 4 separate times, it requires elite biological resilience. But beyond just surviving the injuries, Lemieux had to constantly adapt his actual playing style.
How so? I mean, hockey changed a lot, but how did he adapt?
It completely transformed during his career. So he won his first cup in 1986 and his last in 2000. He had to adapt from the heavy, brutal, kind of clutch-and-grab style of hockey in the late 80s and early 90s to the significantly faster, more agile and systemic game that emerged in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Ah, right, as he was getting older, too.
Exactly. An aging athlete losing their fast-twitch muscle fibers, they really shouldn't be able to survive that transition. But Lemieux adapted his training, his physical positioning, and his tactical approach to remain a defining force as the sport evolved around him. It is the absolute definition of athletic grit.
And that concept of grit, that rare ability to pivot, adapt, and just push forward when the environment is actively fighting you, that's the perfect bridge to what is happening right now in Colorado.
It really is.
Because if you're an athlete, or even an organizer, heading to the 2026 GoPro Mountain Games in Vail this year, you're going to need exactly that same level of grit. Mother Nature has fundamentally altered the playing field.
She really has. The entire foundation of the event has shifted.
So let's address the elephant in the room. We had a historic low snowpack this winter across the Rockies, and that has severely impacted regional river levels.
Very severely.
This goes back to my stadium analogy from earlier. When you're an outdoor festival, you can't just flip a backup generator when the primary power source goes down. Mother Nature is the ultimate event director, and she just called a massive audible. Because of the hydrology constraints, several premier water events are officially canceled for 2026.
It is a huge blow to the traditional schedule.
Yeah, the Pacifico Gorfie Kayak Challenge, the Gorfie Raft Challenge, Kayak Cross, and Raft Cross, they are completely off the table.
Yeah.
But I want to dig into the why here.
Okay.
Why not just run a modified, scraped-down version of those races? I'm sure the athletes would be totally willing to risk it.
Well, the athletes might be willing to risk it, sure, but the organizers are looking at a much larger ecological picture here. This connects directly to the event's Protect Our Playground initiative.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
In whitewater sports, water volume, which is measured in cubic feet per second, or CFS, it dictates everything. When the CFS drops below a specific threshold, it's not just that the course gets slow. The hydrology becomes actively dangerous, but more importantly, running heavy aquatic events in severely depleted rivers, it actually damages the ecosystem.
Wait, you mean beyond just the boats hitting rocks?
Far beyond that. When a river is that low, the hulls of the kayaks and rafts scrape the riverbed, and that completely disrupts the benthic zone.
The benthic zone.
Yeah, the benthic layer is basically the ecological foundation of the river. It's where the insect larvae live, and crucially, it's where local trout populations spawn.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, so if you run a massive competition through a depleted riverbed, you can devastate the local food web for years.
Huh.
So this adaptation, this cancellation, it's a conscious, deliberate choice to protect the waterways during a severe drought. It is ecological stewardship overriding the desire for entertainment.
That level of environmental responsibility is super impressive. But here is where the adaptation gets really intense. The organizers aren't just throwing their hands up and abandoning whitewater entirely.
No, they went to work.
They went out and found viable hydrology.
Yeah.
5 major water events are actually relocating.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pacifico Kayak Freestyle is moving to the Glenwood Whitewater Activity Area in Glenwood Springs on June 5th and 6th.
Right.
And then the Downriver Kayak Sprint, the Downriver R2 Raft Sprint, the Slifer-Smith and Frampton SUP Sprint, and the Yeti Catch Wars. They're all packing up and moving to the Upper Colorado River between the pump house and Radium recreation areas in Bond.
Which is incredible. The logistics of that relocation are staggering. I mean, you're taking the timing equipment, the swiftwater rescue teams, the camera crews, the medical tents, and of course the athletes, and you are shifting that entire operational footprint to venues that are an hour or more away from the main festival hub.
And this is where I really have to push back on the organizers' strategy a bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to picture this from the perspective of someone actually attending the games. Okay, the whole appeal of the GoPro Mountain Games is that centralized electric village energy, right? You wander around Vail Village, you grab a coffee, and you watch kayaks do backflips right in the center of town. If you exile the Cornerstone Water Sports an hour down the highway to Bond or Glenwood Springs, doesn't the festival just lose its soul? It feels like it severely dilutes the experience.
That's a highly valid concern, and, it's one the organizers clearly anticipated because they know the spectator energy is the lifeblood of the event. So they engineered a very clever workaround to maintain that centralized energy.
What are they doing?
They are taking the live multi-camera feeds from the kayak freestyle action in Glenwood, and they're streaming it live on the giant Lucid big screen right at the traditional kayak hole in Vail Village.
Okay, so you still get the communal viewing experience.
Exactly. People can still gather at the riverbank in Vail, grab a drink, and watch the action collectively, but a screen alone isn't really enough to replace live action.
No, definitely not.
Right, so to supplement that digital experience with physical energy, they're staging live slackline shows directly over the empty kayak hole. They're filling the physical void left by the water sports with a different kind of kinetic, acrobatic energy.
Okay, that is brilliant adaptation. You swap the water for the air and you keep the crowd engaged. And they aren't just relying on screens and slack lines either. To compensate for the loss of those water events, they are massively expanding the land-based events.
Oh yeah, big time.
The Adidas Terrex 20K Trail Run is debuting a brand new course this year. And for the first time in the event's history, they are sending runners all the way up to Midvale.
Which completely redefines the physiological demands of that race.
I can't even imagine the lung burn.
Yeah.
Pushing a 20K course that far up the mountain means a really aggressive ascent profile. You're dealing with serious oxygen deprivation and massive elevation gain. The athletes are going to have to dig deep into that biological grit we talked about with Claude Lemieux just to survive the climb.
They really are. The organizers had to adapt their trail mapping to provide a premier challenge that offsets the missing whitewater events. And in doing so, they created an entirely new tier of physical adversity for the runners.
So we've spent a lot of time on the athletes and the environment. But let's shift focus to you, the listener. Because Act 3 of our deep dive today is all about how you are actually going to experience these festival grounds. Spectating an event of this scale, especially one that has been so heavily modified, it requires its own kind of logistical adaptation.
Indeed, it does. Managing tens of thousands of spectators across a modified municipal footprint requires incredibly precise planning.
Let's start with the best detail from your sources. Spectating the 35-plus competitions is 100% free. You can just walk right up and watch elite athletes do their thing.
That's amazing.
It is. But the Mountain Games aren't just a sports competition. It's a massive cultural festival. The Mountains of Music lineup is a huge component. They have free daytime sets programmed at Gear Town and the Bullet Hangout, which is perfect for just, wandering around the village. And then Thursday through Saturday night, they transition into the big, ticketed evening concerts at the Gerald R. Ford Amphitheater.
And that creates a very deliberate rhythm for the weekend. You have the intense athletic exertion and kind of scattered focus during the day, which then consolidates into this communal auditory celebration at night.
But the detail that really caught my attention isn't the music. It's what's happening on Saturday night, June 6th, right at dusk. They are putting on a massive, historic drone show.
Oh, and the historical context for this specific drone show is quite remarkable. They're celebrating what is formally called a sesquicentennial.
I am so incredibly glad you had to pronounce that, not me.
It is quite the mouthful, isn't it? Etymologically, it signifies a 250th anniversary. But in this unique context, it's actually a synchronized triple anniversary.
A triple anniversary.
Yes, they are simultaneously celebrating Vail's 60th birthday, the state of Colorado's 150th birthday, and America's 250th birthday.
That is a brilliant piece of marketing. But I have to ask, why drones? For a triple birthday party of that magnitude, why not the classic booming fireworks show?
Well, this connects right back to the hydrology and the Protect Our Playground initiative we discussed earlier. Using drone swarms instead of fireworks is a critical ecological adaptation for outdoor events operating in dry, drought-prone climates.
Because of the wildfire risk.
Precisely. Traditional fireworks, they rely on combustible propellants. When they explode, they scatter a wide radius of live sparks and burning debris. And in a year with historic low snowpack, the surrounding pine forests and mountain brush are incredibly dry. They act like a tinderbox.
Right, it just takes one spark.
Exactly. Introducing a localized explosion into that environment presents an unacceptable risk of a catastrophic wildfire. Drones, on the other hand, they provide the aerial spectacle, the synchronized lights, and that communal awe without tossing a single live spark into a dry valley. It's an adaptation driven entirely by environmental necessity, utilizing technology to solve a climate problem while preserving the celebratory atmosphere.
I love that. You get the party, but you protect the valley. Now, if you are attending the festival, we absolutely have to talk about another massive part of the spectator experience, and that's Dogtown.
Yes, Dogtown.
The mountain games are famous for being incredibly dog-friendly. Over in Lion's Head, they have the Purina Pro Plan Incredible Dog Challenge experience and the Doc Dogs competitions. If you love dogs, it is the place to be.
It draws a massive crowd of pet owners every year. However, this introduces a crucial logistical adaptation that attendees must be aware of if they are bringing their dog.
Yes, please listen carefully to this next part. Dogs are not allowed on the free town of Vail buses during the event. I repeat, you cannot bring your dog on the municipal transit system.
Which presents a very real practical challenge. The primary parking structures in Vail Village and Lion's Head are paid, and during the mountain games, they hit capacity almost instantly.
They fill up so fast.
They do. So if you're forced to park in the outlying free parking areas, but you have a dog and therefore cannot use the free transit system to get into the village, you are left with a significant logistical bottleneck.
You really have to plan ahead. The organizers suggest carpooling, but honestly, my favorite option, the one that really highlights the town's infrastructure, is taking advantage of the complimentary bike valet.
Oh, that's a great option.
It's the best. You can ride your bike down the municipal paths into town with your dog trotting safely alongside you. Drop your bike at the free valet and just walk right into Dogtown. It bypasses the vehicular traffic, it completely bypasses the exorbitant parking fees, and it solves the bus problem.
It is a perfect example of municipal adaptation. The bike valet acts as a vital pressure relief valve for the town's transit system. It encourages sustainable transport while accommodating the unique demands of a pet-heavy demographic.
It really is all connected. When you step back and look at it, the low water moves the kayaks to bond, the dry forests turn the fireworks into drones, and the municipal bus rules put everyone on bicycles. The entire festival is this giant, living, breathing ecosystem of logistical adaptation.
It really is. And, synthesizing all of those adaptations leads us to a broader, perhaps more sobering philosophical question.
Okay, what's that?
Well, we've looked at systems adapting from the top down and athletes adapting physically. But as climate volatility and historic droughts become more frequent and more severe, are we witnessing a permanent evolution in the outdoor sports industry?
Wow, permanent.
Maybe. 10 years from now, will mountain festivals be entirely land-based and tech-driven, relying on massive digital screens and drone swarms to simulate the experience, leaving traditional whitewater sports as a relic of a wetter past? It is a fascinating and slightly haunting lens through which to view this weekend's games in Vail.
That is a wild thought. A mountain festival where the river is just a memory on a screen. It's definitely something for you to chew on as you head out to navigate the changing landscape this weekend. See you at Avanti's restaurant.